So let's go for it. Let's go from Group A to Group D with the host France, of course, knocked out by South Africa in the quarterfinals. And France, goodness me, they had stormed the pool stage and they look red hot. In the quarterfinals, France, they played some quite breathtaking attack actually, scored some great team tries, but every time they did, they couldn't deal with a high ball or a grubber through, and the lightning quick South African wingers especially chased so hard and they would hit straight back, and despite all that, they still could have won, bar for two huge blunders at the end. Ramos restart, straight into touch, the 22 restart. One for the YouTube bloopers definitely, but then an even bigger blooper is Jalabert's horror round the corner, punting technique, slicing his kick to touch for a penalty backwards, which I don't think we've ever seen. So that combined, that kind of sunk it for them. Sure, Intermac was a big loss for them and Jalabert had played well up until then, but it was just a massive mistake. Antoine Dupont was out of this world once again in this World Cup. Even when he had that face injury, had a plate in his face for the quarterfinal, still played great, but too many poor errors, just wasn't good enough. So similar for Ireland, France's grade will suffer because they did blow such a great chance for immortality, maybe even winning a World Cup in their home nation. So anyway, for all the firepower they had to go down in the quarters, I'm going to give them a 5 out of 10. Then on to New Zealand. Now, of course, they finished runners-up to South Africa in the final. And I think this is a talented bunch of New Zealand players. There's debate that maybe they're not one of the great sides, but I think they're pretty damn good, to be honest. They won the championship, the Rugby Championship, of course. They played probably the most attractive game of all the top teams, scoring some worldy tries, but also some brilliant defence, and that insane ruck pressure, that tackle area contest in the quarterfinal versus Ireland was truly brilliant. But one negative that I'd highlighted throughout is, yes, they were playing to their skill quite a lot, but just playing from deep a little bit too much. They made a few too many mistakes, and many in the comments said, look, that's the way they play, they entertain, and I understand that, but in the end I think they just did it a little bit too much, because in that semi versus Argentina, they did play a lot more sensibly, I'd say. Still scoring plenty of tries, but then building into the game, not overplaying. So I think that was a blueprint for the final. And of course, the red card didn't help to Sam Cane. But even despite that, they did get within a point of winning the World Cup. But of course, they didn't, so a grade 8 for New Zealand. On to Italy. Now, they started the World Cup with some really good-looking wins versus Namibia and Uruguay, but then the ultimate test was versus New Zealand and France. I mean, no one was expecting them to win, but Italy have supposedly progressed in the last few years, and you'd think they'd put up some resistance, but they really didn't, to be honest. Humiliated by New Zealand, who nearly scored 100 points against them. France thumped them as well, 60 points to 7. So we were thinking maybe the gap was closing between Italy and the best, but that gap still seems to be a chasm. So I think it's actually a really disappointing World Cup for Italy, so a grade 2 out of 10 for them. Now, Uruguay, they took France fairly close. They won against Namibia, so a decent showing, and it was all going so well until they got absolutely smashed by a rampant New Zealand, 73-0, so I'd say a grade 4 out of 10 for them. Namibia, well, their World Cup was all about getting the victory in their one winnable game against Uruguay. It was a fierce contest, but ultimately they fell short, so probably a 4 for them. On to Group B, and Ireland, the group of death, of course. And Ireland topped Pool B, but they got knocked out once again in the quarterfinals, this time by New Zealand. And what can you say? In many ways, they had a great World Cup. The build-up was great. The pool performances versus South Africa and Scotland were spot on. They were topping their pool, looking like world beaters. Now, Ireland always knew they'd face a big boy in that quarter-final. It was going to be France or New Zealand. It was New Zealand. They were out for revenge from the losses they've had to Ireland. And New Zealand executed a perfect game plan, stopping the quick ball that Ireland thrive off. They know Ireland want to play quick phases, and they just competed and slowed that ball down. Now, I think it is fair to say it was the best Irish team ever assembled. But no matter how good Ireland have been in the pool or previous years, this is when it counted. It's a tough pill to swallow, but champions perform when it matters the most, and they weren't quite there because that performance in the quarterfinals wasn't one of their best, so overall grade suffers, grade 6 out of 10. On to South Africa, the champions, and maybe that's all that counts. They won the thing. You could say they lost to Ireland in the pool stages, and they only won by a point against France, England and New Zealand. I mean, heart rates must have been maxed out from South African fans, but back-to-back champions. This is the greatest generation group of South Africans ever. I mean, Erasmus, Nienaber, great calls all the way through with their subs often making the difference. So you can quibble about how it was done, but they did it. Back-to-back champions. So let's just go grade 10 out of 10. They are the greatest South African team ever. On to Scotland, and I do enjoy the way Scotland play. I've been saying this for a long time, and as you guys remind me in the comments though, they need to win something for it to mean anything. I mean, they have assembled a great team. They've got a generational talent at fly half in Finn Russell, but yeah, they came up short here. They beat in style those ranked below them. Tonga, Romania put them away very nicely. But then up against the big boys, South Africa and Ireland, they really didn't get close. The way that South Africa soaked up all of Scotland's best attacks, yes, they were attractive, but they didn't go anywhere. Gregor Townsend, it's a bitter pill to swallow because for a while he initially resisted the gung-ho Russell style, if you like, and then he leant fully into it, and it still hasn't been enough. He's been the longest serving Scotland coach. Does he resign now? Does he carry on? That's a big question. It was always going to be tough to get out of the group, but the way that they were swatted aside means it has to be below an average grade, so grade 4 out of 10 for Scotland. Tonga, it was a tough pool and they got their must-win game against Romania, but they still didn't get anywhere close to the big three, so tough pool but still below average, 4 out of 10. On to Romania, and it was always going to be a super tough pool of course, but they have been fighting out with Georgia as the best second tier nation in Europe, if you want to say it like that. They didn't actually get anywhere close, to be honest. Ireland, South Africa, Scotland all crushed them, and then at least they made a match of it against Tonga, but 45-24, it was well beaten in the end, so grade 3 for Romania. On to Group C, and Wales, out in the quarters, but similar to England, they came into the World Cup with very little form or expectation, but Gatland, he evolved a solid international team. Based on their experienced players, even though he took plenty of youngsters in the squad, the likes of George North, Dan Biggar, had really good tournaments. Another massive positive was the confirmation that Jack Morgan is the ideal choice for the Welsh captain going forward. He was outstanding in terms of leadership and just playing. They beat Fiji with a really gritty display, but of course the highlight was the way they completely dismantled Australia. A record win, 40 points to 6, and they didn't just throw the ball around, they literally slowly dismantled them piece by piece until Australia imploded. Unfortunately, their worst performance came in the knockout game versus Argentina, but considering where they were, I think Welsh fans will be fairly happy, so I'm going for a 7 out of 10. Fiji themselves, they're a hard one to grade. Out in the quarters against England, a real mixed bag. Of course, they had that crazy talented squad, but also they had the backup of the core of players from the fully professional Fijian Drua Super Rugby side. The highlight, undoubtedly, the win over the hapless Australians, but then the low point, the panicking, the falling apart versus Portuguese. A tough fought loss against England in the quarters and dreams of what could have been. Ultimately, their core team systems probably weren't quite good enough, like the line out, the kicking game. And I think they never recovered from the pre-tournament loss of their first choice fly half, Drua fly half Caleb Muntz. They tried to cover for it, the kicking was never quite good enough, so dreams of what could have been, as I said, and a grade 6 out of 10 for Fiji. Australia, what can you say about them? It was a disaster for the Wallabies and the now departed Eddie Jones. I mean, he made some outrageous squad selections for the World Cup, ditching a lot of experienced talent, and then it just got worse. And the loss to Fiji was at least close, and they had the chance to make it up against Wales, but the record 40 points to 6 loss just broke their team cohesion completely. It was, nothing short of embarrassing, to be honest. They did scrape a win against the low-ranked Portugal, but it was a disastrous campaign, and I think we have to factor in that it actually got rid of their coach Eddie Jones, who had just come into the job, signing a 5-year contract, and he's out after about 10 months, so I don't think we can go any higher than a grade 1. Then Portugal, they quickly emerged as many nations' second favourite team to support. An amazing, exciting, skill-based game. Their backline was box office. The draw versus Georgia could easily have been a win, but that was exciting. And then the win versus the Power Pack Fijians was the biggest in Portuguese history, so the grade reflects this, grade 8 out of 10. Now Georgia have been sniffing around the Tier 1 nations for a while now, knocking on the door, and this was their chance to make a statement. They'd had wins against the likes of Wales in recent history. They had some solid basics in the World Cup, they're very organised, but it just looked like they lacked star power, that talent, maybe apart from the fullback Ninashvili. Getting close versus Fiji was decent, the dramatic draw against Portugal was exciting, but they should really be winning that match. So overall 0 wins, bottom of the group, is disappointing for them, 3 out of 10. On to Group D and England. Well, if you judge from the expectations, you could say that England's grade should be pretty high. But also you could say they had a very winnable route to go through to those semis, but it's easier saying it than doing it, of course. The tournament tone was set very well by a 14-man England beating Argentina very well, inspired by George Ford's kicking game, the drop goals. The fight, the dog, that was their strongest feature. Solid line-out, solid maul, kick chase, basics, took them within 1 point of the final, but ultimately one of their biggest weaknesses we knew before going into the tournament was their props, and it did undo them in the end against South Africa. And then the start of play, especially for the neutral, was pretty painful to watch, fairly boring, but it was getting them the results. Maybe Borthwick maxed out a limited team, I don't know, we'll see as he moves on, but anyway I think a grade of 7 out of 10 is fair. Argentina started the World Cup with one of their worst ever performances actually against the 14-man England, but they grew into the tournament. The highlight undoubtedly a strong showing versus Wales in the quarter-finals. Some flashes of excellence for sure from the likes of fly half Santi Carreras and the winger Mateo Carreras, but consistency has always been one of Argentina's Achilles heels. They did miss Matera, I thought, although some of their forwards did stand up very well, the likes of Kremer, Gonzalez at times, but they didn't even get close to New Zealand in the semi. It was a hammering, 6 points to 44 in a semi-final of the World Cup. Wasn't the best, so there's still a bit of a chasm between them and the top team, so I'd say a 6 out of 10 for Argentina. For Japan, I think they're one of the teams that maybe achieved about par for the course from what we thought. They're a very good team, but they're not as good as they were 4 years ago, and that's pretty much the story. They competed hard in every match, they scored some great tries, beating Chile, Samoa, but just a little bit below England and Argentina, so meeting expectations but maybe not exceeding them, so grade 5. Samoa, a decent showing for Samoa, getting within a point of England and close to Argentina and Japan. They was good, but none of them were wins, so that would have disappointed them, probably about expectation again, grade 5. And finally Chile, full of fight, full of ambition, but ultimately they didn't really get close to competing in any of their pool games. A handful of tries to cheer, but considering their amazing qualification for the World Cup at the expense of the USA, maybe we expected just a little bit more, so maybe a 3 out of 10 for them. Anyway guys, there we go, a whistle-stop tour to the grades I would give for every nation for the World Cup. Let me know what your grades would be and why, and I'll catch you next time.